everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am Chris, joined as always by Michaela. How you doing, Michaela? Where are you right now?
Still in Massachusetts, but next week I'm actually going home to Michigan, and I'm so utterly excited for that. So next week I'll be in Michigan.
You might be the first person to be that excited about going back to Michigan. But no, I'm kidding.
Listen, Michigan's great.
No, that's fair.
But today in
No,
Massachusetts, I did share my fear of beavers to the online world, which I am thoroughly regretting. So
yeah,
that's
no, that was a tactical error. That
it
you
was.
knew
It was.
you knew you had to leave that. There's so many jokes and so many reasons that's
I
funny.
am.
So.
I'm getting so many terrible memes right now. But okay, listen, it is a very logical and pragmatic fear because if you think about it, okay, right? When I'm doing my stream surveys and you can't see anything under the water in the Northeast or anywhere in the Midwest, I don't have to worry about gators. I don't have to worry about a gar or pike biting me, or I don't worry about snapping turtles. What is the most logical fear? Beaver. A beaver just chomping through my hand or my leg. Okay, that is a very pragmatic. That's a practical fear.
I mean,
now I shared it, and I'm regretting it. So that's
Yeah.
the newest. That is the newest thing that is up with my life as a biologist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're more dangerous than people think. I'll give you that, but I still don't. I wouldn't really call them a phobia of mine. But I understand. I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yes,
Did
it's
I
true.
share you? I shared you that article of that man getting shredded.
There's been people- I know there's been people killed by them before. So they have. People are always shocked that there's been deaths from beavers. So like it's. I understand. I still think I wouldn't be scared of them, but I respect.
7
It's not
dams today. I climbed over 7 beaver dams.
I know. I used to when I go to Canada and do my wetland bird surveys. I see like they threaten you. They come up and they threaten you with the tail. So I know. I love them. That's why they're Canada's national animal, right?
They're on all of your dollar coins.
They just mess you up. So I respect that. I respect that.
Anyways, Chris, how are you? Where are you today?
Well, I'm here as always in the Amazon. It's as you can tell, we're back to a little bit of cold weather. It's actually quite comfortable to be honest.
Oh wow!
It's actually really nice. It's in for you Americans out there. It's in the right now. It's in the like low 70s, high 60s. It's actually quite nice. So yeah, for everyone else in the entire world, it's in the low 20s, high teens, low 20s. Quite nice. Yeah, no, just kicking around. And as you guys might be able to, you can't really tell from Michaela because she's indoors, but you can probably tell from me by the horrible lighting here. We're recording this at night because, yeah, it's actually not. We usually do these shows on a weekend. As for those little inside tidbit for viewers and listeners, we usually record these over the weekend. But yeah, it's what is it even today? God, is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday.
I think it's Tuesday. It feels
Amazon,
like it's Friday already.
I have no idea what day. I work every day, so I don't really know. Other than a sporting event or something, I have no idea what day it is. So basically, yeah, it's a Tuesday night, and yeah, so we're recording it now because I was too busy on Sunday to do anything because I was doing 15 kilometers of walking in 9 hours in the middle of jungle collecting camera traps. So while I was doing that, I didn't have the time to join you, Michaela, as you spoke to Michaela. I'm actually glad I wasn't in this because this is too confusing.
Yeah.
Michaela. Try and say that 100 times.
That would be really. It's a good tongue twister, especially when you're tired.
On Sunday, you guys got a chance to speak, and maybe you can introduce a little bit about Michaela. God, I almost butchered it. And just a little bit about the episode and the conversation that we're gonna listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it was really exciting. Michaela's a really good friend of mine. We've been friends for 8 years now, which is pretty crazy. Meaning that I'm getting older now. But we met back when we were both in Australia back in 2007. Sorry, that's my cat. Willow's joining the party again. But we met back in Australia in 2017. And both in marine science. And Michaela is a whale conservationist and a naturalist, and she spends a lot of her time educating people about whales and also taking a lot of data collection. And I think we have a really great conversation. This is how tired I am after 2 days of field work, right? But we have a really good conversation about what it's like in the world of whales as a female scientist, and also just, kind of get an insight of how to get into working in the world of whales, and especially in cetaceans too. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear it, and for Chris to hear it, and Willow too. So
All right.
here we
Well,
are.
I think Willow's ready, so let's go
She's
ahead and
ready.
go for it. Let's go.
All right. All right, welcome back, everyone, to Field Stories. I am your host and only host today, or co-host, as you should say, Michaela Corey, and unfortunately, Chris and Nick will not be joining us. But I'm extremely delighted to be introducing our guest today, and a very good friend of mine, Michaela Tremblay. Michaela has been my friend for about 8 years now, which makes me feel quite old. Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, we were just in Australia yesterday.
Wait, actually, before we started recording this, I was laughing to myself because I bought this shirt in Australia, like,
did you
weeks
really?
before we met. Yeah, it's one of the only things I still have that I bought from there. But I was giggling that I was like, of course, this is the thing I'm wearing today for this interview.
That's awesome.
I know.
So Michaela and I actually, we both studied abroad in Australia, up in northern Queensland and Townsville, and so that's how we met, and we were studying marine science up there, and we were bonded for life, and then lo and behold, 8 years later, we are back in Massachusetts together again, although we're FaceTiming apart now, or on the podcast again, and I'm just really excited to be actually hosting her as a guest today. And Michaela is a whale conservationist, and she has been in whale conservation since back in 2016. And I'm not going to really put any spoilers out, and I'm really just excited for her to kind of tell her story. So, yeah, take it away, Michaela.
I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me again. We had a little bit of a...
Okay, a little prelude here. We already had Michaela on. It was a lovely podcast, and then unfortunately technical issues as the theme of Field Stories.
No. Mick was in a van with no air conditioning and potentially a limb of a deer in the back of...
Oh yeah, there's a rotting maggot limb, everyone. Yeah. Just common things that I deal with as a biologist.
Those are the complications that weren't affecting the interview podcast.
No, but I suffered so long for that too.
You did. But I'm happy to be back. And happy to talk about whales. As I told you, I love any reason to geek out about whales.
I'm so excited to learn more about the whales again.
You know it. But yeah, I guess to share why I have information about whales to share. I started whale watching a little bit unconventionally. I was really into turtles, like maybe 4 months before I met Mick. Whales were not even on my register. I was a full turtle girl.
Before I was a turtle girl.
Before Mick was a turtle girl. I was sea turtles, not so much terrestrial, but yeah.
We forgive.
We're still turtle family at one point. It's fine. But yeah, I went on a whale watch and was put to work by the naturalist, who is now my boss in another job that I do. And I just kind of fell in love with the idea of seeing animals in their natural habitat, and then also being the person to talk about them and learning about them as individuals in the Gulf of Maine. So that was a lot of fun. And then after I graduated from University of Tampa, I went to Alaska for a little while to be a naturalist, came back to Massachusetts, and then now I work for a whale and dolphin charity called ORCA, where I live aboard passenger ships, and I take data on whales and dolphins where they utilize any hotspots or important distribution areas that we didn't quite know about, so that future shipping lanes or any sort of building construction, anything that might change in that area, that data is accessible to them. So, and then in return, we get to geek out about whales with a bunch of passengers. And when I'm home, I get to talk about kids with whales through the Whale Mobile, which is a life-sized inflatable humpback whale that we get to go inside of and just get kids excited about whales and the importance about them, and starting to get them to care about conserving them. So it's a lot of fun. Lots of whales.
Lots of whales. That's pretty awesome. So you definitely have, I mean, I think a lot of people's dream job, right?
Yeah. My mom actually told me today that a couple of her friends at work said to her that they want to be me when they grow up, and they're like on the verge of retiring.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I think it's definitely it's my dream job. It's an incredible job. I get to travel the world. I get to learn more about these animals and teach people about them at the same time. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet it is, but I know, so, you know, as we are pretty good friends, we definitely have highlighted the good and the bad. And I think it is kind of important to kind of talk about, you know, what are some things that are tough, you know, in your field right now? And, you know, what are some raw realities that you do endure in whale conservation that I think that some scientists are not aware of, or some people that are going into these fields or really want to go into these fields? You know?
Yeah, no, that's a super good question. And yes, it is. It's my dream job, and I love it. But I also think that there are people who maybe have more conventional jobs, if we will, that are also maybe their dream jobs, but they have components to them that are not so dreamy. And I do think it's easier to see those components than it is to maybe someone who gets to fly and go to these really cool places that I am fortunate to going to, but there are definitely components to ship life and just like tourism that I think get overlooked a lot. I think a lot of the people that live on these ships, you're going to these areas that are incredibly hard to get to, and because of that, it takes a lot of time to get there, and so you tend to stay there for a long time, and that you, instead of having this 9 to 5 job where you put all of your time into it for this certain time of day, and then you can go home, talk to your partner, go hang out with friends, get some ice cream, get some drinks, whatever suits you. That is something I think that gets very overlooked within our industry. I mean, we are on the ship. If I'm talking about, I was fortunate enough to be sent to Antarctica earlier this year, and I got there at the beginning or middle of January, and I left in the early middle of March. And that entire stretch of time, you are working 12-hour days, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
You don't get days off. You might get an hour or two in certain ports, but for the most part, you're on small ships. You are the guest interaction. You are leading excursions, which is, again, part of the job, but it starts to add up as you go through these months of being on board and repeating the same information that you love repeating, but maybe not remembering how many times you've said it, or if you've already said something to somebody because this is the third trip around the same itinerary. And, it starts to kind of become more challenging to show the passion that you have immensely about this animal when you have been so passionate 7 days a week, 12 hours a day,
totally,
for 2 months at a time. And I think that that's an exaggerated version to whale watching as well. We're still sharing the same information. It's that person's first time whale watching. So you're going over how they eat and how they breathe and why they're here. And I love sharing that information, but it's very different to share in, April and May of the season as opposed to September and October of the season after you've said it so many times within a week. So and still wanting to give the same that you gave to the people at the beginning of the season, but just not having that capacity to do as much as you would like to for the people who are showing just as much interest. Yeah, it's definitely a complicated part to it, and it definitely creates burnout, which adds to this level of what we were saying earlier, not being able to do your job as effectively, because passion is a huge part about it. We're all in this because we're passionate about it, and if you start to lack that passion, you start to not be able to do your job as effectively, and then everything starts eating at you a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I mean, I think you really hit, the nail on the head. But, I find it funny because I've had people come up to me and they're like, man, like if I were you, I would never get sick of my job. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, just you wait. Like the burnout happens,
Oh yeah.
And it's crazy because it's like sometimes you really need to have that delicate balance between passion and crazy obsession, and also just have that work-life balance too. But I look at like, especially like mammalogy, and also just cetaceans and the study of whales too. And I feel that sometimes like your field is really heavily exploited too, because I feel that some people really exploit that passion of like, oh, you get to work with whales, so you can't complain about working over 60 hours a week and making $100 a week too. Can you like kind of elaborate about how you avoid that burnout and then avoid also being overexploited? Because I know that is a common thing in that field.
Yeah. I mean, I think in my experience through hands-on work with animals, which is always something I knew I wanted. I mean, I'm not hands-on with these whales at the moment,
right.
but kind of being as close as I can ethically get to these animals and helping them the best that I can, but also educating people on that forefront. I think in a weird way, a beautiful part of it is that passion does matter more than education.
Mm-hmm.
I like that's something I think I talk about with kids. I think there are a lot of kids who feel like maybe they're not the smartest kid in their class and they could never be in a science world, because honestly, kids feel that way. But then my college professors told me those things. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
it gets ingrained in you. And I think part of my personal mission when I'm doing these things with these kids is I was definitely not top of my class, but I'm confident in telling you that I had people who don't speak a single word of English listen to me talk about whales for an hour because they saw my passion through what I was saying. And they would listen to me over someone who had a PhD in that field. And while having a PhD in that field is still equally as important to what I'm doing, you are still completely capable of doing these things without having that PhD. And sometimes not having that PhD within the tourism education aspect of what I'm doing actually makes you a lot better at your job in a weird backwards kind of way, right? You are less academic, you are more social, and so you're able to have these more intelligent conversations with people that might not have entertained those conversations because they were scared to.
Right.
You kind of invite people who don't feel like they can be part of that industry in that industry, and that's something that I actually really like about our industry, that I can tell people you just have to do the job for free for a little while, and you will prove that you can do it better than someone who might have a 4.0 GPA honors in their class.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity in science that is beautiful, but also hindering, because people have to have the opportunity to be able to do something for free for a little while. But then I think within the cetacean world, you have a little bit more of a disconnect within that same realm that I was talking about, where you have like the whale watchers, and then you have the cetologists, the people who went to school to publish papers on these animals.
Yeah.
But these people couldn't publish these papers without the naturalists going out there and taking the data that these PhD students have to publish their research. And while we take the data for these people that are equally as important, we're also able to reach the masses of people who might still think that whales breathe water. Do you know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
We're able to kind of have our hands in both of these worlds, and that's definitely my favorite part about the industry that I'm in. But because your hand is in both of those worlds, it definitely creates this clash of well, what part of this whale world are you really involved in?
Right.
And I think that's where we've talked about in the past, where like there's this not camaraderie. I wish there was more of a camaraderie within all whale people, but it ends up being a lot more competitive than I think it should be.
Yeah. No, I totally understand. Yeah.
If that answered your question, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. I find that that's very similar in the herp world too, because we have like our hobbyist herpers or educators or naturalists as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our biologists, such as myself, or our PhDs, our herpetologists, and that there's some tension and there's not as much camaraderie as you say between the two. However, like our hobbyist herpers or our naturalists, like although there's some that are detrimental to the populations, there are so many that have found out so much. Like a lot of our herpetologists started out as hobbyist herpers.
Absolutely.
Right. And the same thing, with our naturalists too. And so for us to snub our noses down because you don't have a proper education, and to even like for myself, like I don't have a PhD yet. I don't know if I ever will get one. I don't know if I want one, but I know with my experience, my research with what I'm doing with, my passion too, right? The same as yours, to be looked down upon or to not be as equivalent as someone with a PhD, that's preposterous, right? And so
Absolutely.
I think you're right, and I think what you're showing for younger scientists, younger kids who want to be in a role such as yours, is that there's so many different possibilities, and I think that people in our generation are trying to mow down a path for these younger generations to show that, like, hey, you know what? We're not going to be looking down on you, going, hey, you don't have that education, so shame on you. You're not equivalent enough. You can't study whales. You're not good enough. You don't have a PhD. No, that's ridiculous.
If you can do the job better than anybody else, then you should do the job. It doesn't matter how much you paid to get the education to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
This is a digression, but like there is this artist I love who's actually from Australia. Her name is Mia Palm. She's in a band called Hiatus Coyote, and her voice is like the most incredible voice I've ever heard in my whole entire life, and she has never had a voice lesson in her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Yet I think she is more talented than people who have probably been put in voice lessons since the second they were popped out of the womb.
Yeah.
And that just, like, that is a weird parallel in my life, which just tells me, like, you don't need this stereotype of way of getting somewhere to get exactly where you need to be and actually do it better than most people. It gives me a lot of hope. And I think a lot of it too is this overstep in those lines, right? You have your naturalists and, people who are really excited hobbyists, and you have people who have gone to school for these things. And sometimes you'll have the people taking the data maybe step in and share some information, and that can rub that naturalist the wrong way. And like vice versa, you could be the naturalist and have and step over something that the scientist is doing and kind of take credit for something that maybe is not giving them the credit of what they're doing. And I think that's a lot of where the lack of camaraderie comes from as well. It's not looked at like we're all on the same page here. I'm taking the data and talking to people about what we're doing, and you're able to get it into the science world to make things happen within what we're talking about to the rest of the world. And we're all working together, and we actually can't do anything without each other. So why are we all still pretending like one job is better or more sought out after than the other? Because
it becomes a hierarchy, and people get too powerful in their minds when they start to climb up the chain, and their egos get too big, and it's too bad. And I think things are starting. I want to continue to stay positive, because I think our generation and the younger generations are starting to change that mindset.
Oh my gosh,
because
absolutely.
right, yeah,
I've seen it within the cruising industry as well. Like,
good,
there is such a refreshing group of younger people, like people with between 20 and 30, who are getting hired over maybe the people who on paper look a lot more qualified,
oh yeah,
but are able to capture, like, are able to get the entire ship to listen to birds every single day for an hour, which I think you have people that go on those ships that are there to see birds, but you also have people who are like, I could care less about birds. And yet, by the end of the trip, that person is just interesting enough to listen to, that half of them who never thought they would care about birds now just bought a bird book when they went home. And it's because you hired the person who just really wants to talk about him and really wants to see them for the first time over the person who's been studying them their entire life.
yeah,
And again, both are really important, but I think it's really important to see where these important roles best suit all components to what we're all trying to achieve.
yeah. No, absolutely. No, I think that's absolutely fair. Now, I'm curious too. With ORCA, are you allowed to share, any kind of cool research or information on what you've been seeing, trend wise with the whales?
I personally don't have very much to say about trends that we've been seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are a couple places that we have like really, really consistent data on since
Yeah.
the start of our company, but we have just recently in the last year, I was one of the first people to take data in the Tasman Sea, which was really, really cool.
Interesting.
So I think that in respects to ORCA, they're getting a much more global footing, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anyone listening, planning on doing a cruise, definitely checking out ORCA is worth your time, because we partner up with, I think, 19 cruises and ferry companies at this point. And if a company is partnered with ORCA, it means that they have also agreed to specific standards that we will not compromise on within a partnership. That means if you are a cruise ship that's visiting places that sell whale meat commercially, like, your ship will not be offering any excursions that allow you to partake in those things, because you have a partnership with ORCA, and ORCA is against commercial whaling. And so there are a lot of really cool components to what ORCA stands for, and putting pressure on these cruise ship industries to maybe back off of some sort of tourist trends based off of a whale and dolphin conservation that's been studying these animals for almost 2 decades now. So it's been pretty cool to be part of the change in ORCA. I've seen it grow a lot in just the 2 years that I've been there, and just other companies and other people that are familiar with it.
So looking at your job and, knowing how tough this field is to get into, especially just getting your foot in a door, with sea turtles, whales, dolphins. I mean, I feel like that bracket tax as one of the most difficult fields just to work in. How do you feel like you got made yourself distinguishable versus other competitors and other, applicants? And what advice would you give to other, blossoming scientists and students in the up and coming in this field?
Yeah.
Brag about
I
yourself
really
right now.
I really like this question. I don't know how to answer it.
I know, right? It's tough.
I feel like all of my answers for you today are very backwards, but I feel like you've been very nice about my answers. I think I go into things just very excited to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you met me in Australia. That I assume was my vibe. I want to do everything that if someone wants to do something I've never done, hell yeah, I'm there. Like, I, I am just happy to be there.
Yeah.
And I think I've also lived my life a little bit like waiting to meet the next person who tells me about the cool new job opportunity. And I think that I've just been fortunate in picking these random opportunities that people have mentioned to me once and just saying, well, I'm just going to apply and see what happens. And like knowing which ones to take and which ones not to take, which I've definitely made mistakes in the past, but I think I'm really excited to learn about things, and I get more excited to go to places that I haven't been before because I can learn about it beforehand, but being there, it's ingrained forever. And I've learned so much in these last 2 years
Mm-hmm.
because I've gone to all of these new places where whales only live in those places. So I have to go to those places to see them. And yeah, I would like to think that just my excitement and enthusiasm for seeing them and talking about how cool I think they are, um, is what probably sets me apart, from other people in my industry. But I also think that I've surrounded myself with a lot of incredible women within the whale watching industry, especially in Massachusetts. I mean, I mentioned the Whale Mobile, Cindy, who put me to work as a passenger. I mean, I don't know what she thought she was doing, but has just really guided me through really great ethics within the whale watching industry. And I just have a really great group of girls who I can share a new fact with, and I'm really excited to share with them, or like, oh, I heard this, what does this mean? And no judgment, and just kind of having a group of girls that I hope and want the rest of the whale watching industry to be like
Yeah.
has probably helped me stay really positive and happy to be there because I have a really good support system. And
That's
yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's so important, especially. I was talking to another biologist, colleague, and a good friend of mine. She's another turtle biologist, and we were talking about how either like women in our field, they can either be so supportive or just absolutely like they could just tear you down because it can be just so competitive
yeah,
and just really neck to neck, and that can be just really like disappointing. And just to have a really good tribe of women that can be just really supportive and uplifting and just inspiring is so important to have, especially when it's so dominating by men, and that
yeah,
it can be really intimidating and can be very unsafe and unsupporting. And so to have that is so special too. So I'm really
yeah,
glad and happy to hear that you have that.
absolutely. And I think that that's a common theme in all aspects of science, unfortunately. I mean, in
And
all
it is,
aspects in women in the working world.
especially in STEM. Mm-hmm.
I think that is a stigma of it was really hard to get here. And so I'm not going to let you ruin that for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And there's a lot of me that completely gets that. I like, as someone who did have a whale watch naturalist position in Massachusetts, which is harder to come by than I thought it was at the time. This was probably one of my not so great choices within these random opportunities that have
Mm-hmm.
presented themselves. That job is really, really hard to come by, and I didn't quite understand how hard it was to come by when I had it.
Yeah.
And because of that, the dynamic changes whether or not you do have that whale watching job or not. And people would like that job, as I would love more than anything to have a whale watching job right now in Massachusetts. But I think that there is this, once you have it, it's yours until you either mess up or you don't want it anymore. And so there is this, I need to make sure that no one is coming for my job sometimes. And I think that's an aspect to all of science right? You finally get
Mm-hmm.
this position that you've been waiting for, but so many people, just like you at one point, wanted this position so badly. Now you have it. People will do whatever they can to make sure that they keep it. And
It's pretty, it's
yeah,
messy.
yeah, it is messy. And I'm, again, really, really fortunate that I've been mostly surrounded by women within my community of whale watching that just
Mm-hmm.
support each other and want to create this whale watching community that we all think would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a complication too.
You know, it's funny. Moving over here, I found that the women are a lot more supportive and very encouraging. They're very real, very blunt, very blunt. You Easterners.
That's Massachusetts.
I know. But, you know, compared to the Midwest, they're
you never
very...
have to know what anyone's thinking here. That's
No,
for sure.
you don't. No, you don't. Yeah, you know, I have learned that. But
it's kind of a beautiful thing about Massachusetts.
Yes, it is. I have appreciated that. And, you know, honestly, and I love, like, especially in the department that I'm in, you know, there's so many women in very big positions, and they're strong women, and they're very blunt, and I love them. They're awesome. They're very inspiring. And compared to where I was in the Midwest, the women were nice, but I didn't realize how much that they wanted you to fail. And they would be very nice to your face, but they would want you to fail secretly. And I would finally realize that later on, especially when I moved over here, how much that they were very envious of you, because it's, especially in the field that I was in, non-game species, because the Midwest is very game species oriented.
Right.
They, you know, would be very kind to you, but like, it was just very like cutthroat. They would just want you to fail because they wanted that position. And I don't think it would be very personal. It's just, you know, it's just, they need to feed themselves and they need that job. And it was really sad. But yeah.
No, and I think that that's something that we've experienced in very different ways within our science industries. Is I am actually in a niche part of the STEM community.
Oh, absolutely.
That is majority women. And I think that that is because of our ability to narrate and speak on the animal that we are currently with. I think it's our ability to express the passion that we have for the animal, which makes us good at our job.
Yeah.
But so my, I guess, work drama was predominantly female based, as opposed to most STEM jobs and industries that are realistically most male based, because that's most of the industry. But from all of my experience on all coasts, in all the places that I've been, I would say 90% of the naturalists that I've seen are women.
Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, you're right.
More than often, I mean, as years increase, you're starting to see a lot more female captains, which is pretty cool. But it is this little niche pocket of the science world that has been heavily dominated by women for quite some time. Especially in Massachusetts. It's like almost a female-run data collection unit at that point.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing, and a really cool thing I'm proud of for being part of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's amazing, especially when, you know, if you're looking at the world of science, I mean, it's a good old boys club, and we've all talked about that for so long. I mean, I go to conferences and, you know, it's just predominantly men, and it's not like that it's always a bad thing, but it's great to see that it's changing, and we're seeing diversity, not only just women, but we're seeing an increase in the BIPOC community, we're seeing an increase in tribal members, we're seeing an increase in the LGBTQIA plus community. Like that, it's amazing. And so it's finally just to see an increase in a diverse community where inclusion, it matters. And that's just beautiful. But like to see a niche community where it's just like a different field outside of just men. Thank God. Sorry, but holy cow.
I get it. And it's actually something I don't think I've quite fully processed until right now, is that like truly the people that worked within whale education, all of us but one in my intern year were female. And it was just the crew and the captain that were male. But like all of the people that were there to do any sort of science related anything except for one boy were all female. And there were probably about 20 of us. And every single year that would be pretty consistent. Now they have more female crew. They've got more females representing in places that they weren't always, but for the most part, like the science aspect of whale data has been heavily run by females in Massachusetts and New England.
Women rule the world, man.
We do.
But anyways, all right. Well, as much as I do want to keep talking about this subject, I think it is the time to transition into our field story. So I don't know if you're going to tell the same one that you did last time. Obviously, our audience doesn't know, but I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I know. I was like, do I give the same one? Do I give a different one? Okay, I will give the same one.
It was so good.
It was one of my first whale watch trips of the year. It was the summer after I had gone on my whale watch and put to work by Cindy. And then she just basically said, you had passion. They loved you. You can come back and help out for the rest of the summer. And so I did. And so the next summer I just applied to be an intern. And I started to fall in love with the beginnings and the ends of the season because of this one interaction. And it was a really terrible weather day. Most normal non-whale nerds would look at the weather and be like, I'm probably not going to go on a whale watch today. But that doesn't stop us. So it was really, really foggy. It had just stopped raining and we were just kind of looking, hoping. We were like, this is where all the food was yesterday. Like we got some reports this morning. Like we're just hoping that these whales stuck around. And then the fog pushed off a little bit and we saw, I want to say like 7 or 8 sei whales, SEI, which are baleen whales. They're the 3rd largest whale species. They are only seen in our waters between the month of April, and they may be seen for a week or two within that month, and they must push off further to maybe the continental shelf where more krill can be found, but we really don't know where they go. And they've got this really funny feeding behavior. And so when you do get the chance to see them, it's always really cool. This was my first time seeing them, first time ever hearing of a sei whale. And baleen whales have these pleats on their throat where they expand 3 times the size of what we see when we look at a picture of a whale, like kind of like a pelican's throat. And humpback whales have hot pink, but like sei whales pleats, the skin that you don't normally see when they're in is like bright red, hot pink. It's like the craziest color. And as they go in for all of their food, they big wide open mouth, but then they kind of do this somersault roll kind of thing where they end with their throat on the surface of the water and they close their mouth and they push all the water out. It's just silly and ridiculous. And it's already rare to see this group of sei whales that don't normally travel together to begin with, but they're all feeding at the same time. And then we're starting to see that there's one that just looks really weird and just non-functioning. And we're like, what is going on? And we realized that it was a humpback whale calf that must have been separated from its mother at some point because that mom and calf stay together for the first year of its life. And it was small enough to still be a calf, but no mother to be seen anywhere in the area. And it seemed like this group of sei whales that have formed this group, apparently, were teaching the baby humpback whale how to eat in these feeding grounds the only way that a sei whale knows how to eat, which is just not how humpback whales do it. And it was just, one, really inspiring to hear the naturalist talk on it, but 2, just to see 2 different species of really empathetic animals helping each other out, and it being on a day where we really didn't think we were going to see anything anyway. And it just was It's just really cool. You don't always get to see animals helping other animals out of the kindness of their own hearts. And I mean, that's basically what we were watching. Those sei whales had nothing to do with that humpback whale at all. We'll never have anything to do with them, really. And yet they took their time out of the 2 weeks that they spend close to the shore of the Gulf of Maine to teach this baby in distress how to at least do something to survive, which is just, it's really inspiring.
Oh, that's so sweet. I remember you saying that like humpbacks like have exhibited empathy to other animals or other whales too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's something that we've seen all over the world, is this level of self-awareness and like selflessness of putting themselves at risk for the sake of helping another animal or human. I mean, there's a global story. If you look it up on Facebook right now, it was all over Facebook, I remember, where this woman was being pushed by this humpback whale and she was freaking out because they are big animals and you would think that they are a lot more threatening than they are. But she was snorkeling and she just kept getting pushed by this whale. And finally, she gets up to the surface and she realizes that the whale pushed her back to her boat and that there was the biggest tiger shark that I've ever seen on footage. And this whale brought this woman back to safety because it could sense the approaching intentions of that shark. You've also had countless instances of adult humpback whales helping out other humpback whale babies or other whale babies by putting their bodies in between the baby and an orca while the orca is trying to eat the baby of another humpback whale that they don't even know. That would be like me jumping on a train track to save a baby of a lady in a train station that I've never met before. And like then all of our instincts say, don't do that. Don't do that. But you have an animal in the wild that's doing that consistently. And it's just, it's just really, it's definitely the thing that keeps me hooked on whales.
And then you said like sei whales, they don't like hang out in pods, right? Either?
No. All whales that have baleen in their mouth, that like hairy stuff, those whales are solitary animals. They're eating really, really tiny things in the most amounts that they can, in small portions of the year. So like humpback whales, for example, are here from April to October, and they're eating about 2,000 to 4,000 pounds of food every single day that they're here. And so how I put it to kids is if you had to go out into the field at your school and individually find 2,000 to 4,000 French fries every single day at lunchtime in order to survive, do you think you would bring a friend with you? Or do you think that you would just keep all 2,000 to 4,000 that you could find so that you could eat as much food as you could?
That's a pretty good analogy.
Right? And so we will see them have brief associations.
Yeah.
But they're more like we're both here, might as well keep each other company. But for the most part, they don't benefit from each other. Whereas toothed whales, they don't survive without the help of their pods.
Right.
They are way more pod oriented. So yeah, you had this species of whale that is already supposed to be solitary, and it's come together to help this other species that has nothing to do with them, to teach them what it knows so that it could at least survive a little bit longer. It's crazy.
Wow.
And it definitely is why I'm still doing this 8 years later.
I mean, that would keep me going too. I mean, how could it not, you know?
Yeah. And I do think that every interaction I have with the same whale or a different whale, you learn the individual quirks and interests and just like little things that make them feel so human to you. And you just love them.
Man.
You just want to do everything you can to get other people to love them also. So.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I definitely I went on a whale watching ship with my mom and my sister. I told you in Gloucester.
Gloucester. Gloucester.
Gloucester.
Gloucester.
Gloucester.
There you go.
I'm getting an accent. I got the Australian accent when I was over there for a bit. Well,
I could never do it. Could never do it. All I could say was, keen for a cheeky tattoo, eh?
I'm not going to do anymore because I definitely don't have it anymore. I went straight back to the Canadian Michigander accent, and then yeah. So apparently some Massachusetts people think I'm from England with my Canadian accent. Yeah,
that's really disappointing. I'm disappointed in my state.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
This guy at the gas station thought I was from England. And yeah.
That's rough. I will say your accent is a lot more pungent than it's ever been.
Is it?
Yeah. When I saw you every week, I was just like, I don't remember Mick's accent being that thick.
That's awesome.
But maybe it's because you're in a world of massholes now, and I just am constantly
you're Boston people too much, man. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it is.
The Midwesterners too much. Dude,
I didn't have the Australian accent to help me. Like,
I think I was too balanced out. I think I was around the Aussies too much. I came back and everyone's like, "You have an Australian accent now," and I was like, "I do."
You're going to go home. You're going to go visit your family in Michigan in a couple years, and you're going to be like, hey, guys, I packed my car.
I packed my car.
Where do I put my car keys?
You want to go to the bar?
My favorite show is Law and Order.
Everyone's already logged off now. Anyways.
This is the best way to end this.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
We talked about some pretty heavy stuff.
We did.
Now we're laughing.
We're just ending it quite lightly now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining again, Michaela.
Yes. Please have me on a third time. This was great.
I'd love to. Maybe we can do it together and have some beers and possibly a joint or something.
Perfect. I may
it's legal here.
Or may not have a margarita in a goldfish cup ready to go. So
and not smack into a glass window.
It was a screen door.
Screen door.
It hurt a lot less.
Makes it worse, dude.
No, I think it makes it better.
At least like a glass door, you know, it's like you can't see it. The screen door is like fully visible, man.
It was nighttime. Nighttime. I couldn't see it.
She was sober too, man. She was sober.
I was going in to get a margarita. Yeah, it's bad, but
this is not good. It's not good on your face.
No.
Anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share.
And get into science.
Get into science, everyone.
Get into science.
See you next week.
All right, well, that was awesome. Really enjoyed that. Thank you for taking the time to speak to her. And I guess, a little off the record, little info. We had this happen with Philip, if you remember, a few months ago. Riverside kind of messed this up because we actually did interview Michaela a while ago, and that was a great interview then as well. And I was a part of that. It was like, kind of tragic that we lost the interview because I loved it.
I know.
You were gracious enough to come back on again. I guess being your friend has perks, right? So it was great to have her on again. And this interview was a little different this time, but that's great. And it just shows you how much there is to talk about with her. And I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, and in the interview we had talked about it, especially I remember with the first interview I had stopped mid-field work and I was in that truck with the dead deer leg that had like maggots and it was like, I was roasting, it was like 100 degrees and you guys were like checking on me or like, are you okay? I was like, I'm dying, but it's fine. And then my video that didn't work.
Yeah.
So angry. But no, I thought, that interview was really great too. And I think, what's really special with Michaela is that, she's so flexible with what she can talk about and she is so passionate about what she does. And I think we just touched on a variety of topics. For we touched on like the toxicity within the whale realm, but also about how her passion really pushes through, and it just kind of looks at the bright side of it, and how she kind of pushes through that burnout that we all experience. And how she is surrounded, one, she works in a realm of women, which is really rare in the field of STEM, especially like we work in a world of herps and ornithology, and that is very male dominated. And so it's really cool to see her work in a field that's really dominated by women, but also she's really lucky to be working with women that are just really positive and really encouraging. And that's really tough, especially, what we had talked about is that sometimes, unfortunately, because it's already tough for women such as us to be, in this field where we're just competing against one another, because we've been kind of just forced in that role. But to have women, rather than competing, but just really just uplifting and being inspiring and just, encouraging one another. And so for her to have that, and to be in such a tough position already, where it's already really hard for her to get in a role like that, it was just a really great conversation. And I think, just to wrap it up, is just seeing her and just having her talk about how to get that experience and get into such a amazing role like that. And that's really a hard role to, come across. So I think we just had a really fluid conversation. It was just really also fun just talking to a good friend, as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, it's obvious you guys have a great rapport, and obviously, I'm sure you could do a whole Field Stories After Dark episode about all your shenanigans from Australia. But,
absolutely not, never. She has a lot of recordings of me that she like every time we get together. She's like, oh, we used to get together. Oh God, this is not good. And she loved the voice memos. And I hated it. I hated it. She would like voice memo, and she just like record the whole night. And then whenever we get together, she goes, I still have them. And she'll like play them. And then you'll just hear me because I'm very loud. And it's horrifying. I'll have to tell you after this airs. Okay. And when it's not recording, how we met. Because I can't remember if I did tell you or not. But we met in a very unique way. But yeah.
That's for the premium subscribers only, that one. Yeah,
Patreon, good. Everyone. That's when you guys can start paying.
No, that's awesome. That was good. I'm so glad she came back on. Really enjoyed it. And I said when we spoke, when the other interview that we lost, sadly, I mentioned we actually recorded that right after I'd come back from Canada, and the experience I had there in Canada with amazing experience I had with whales there, which I still haven't been able to share on social media yet, but one day I'll be able to. Someday. Anyways, still waiting for the official reveal on our social media. Anyways, one day it'll come out. It is super cool, and it certainly, I can completely understand why anyone would become sort of in love with marine mammals after that experience up there. It was really cool. So I really enjoyed when we spoke before, and in listening to this. You're right. Her passion for it is obvious, and really, really pretty infectious. So it was great. Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for carrying the way when I wasn't available. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll have Michaela on again, and we can speak with her and Michaela and everyone else. And I guess we should I think we've kind of just forgotten about Nick at this point, but Nick's still alive, we think.
Who?
Yeah, good point, eh?
Who's that?
Nick Smith. I know it's such a generic name. It almost feels like it's not even real anymore.
Nick Smith.
But he's looking a little rough. He doesn't. Yeah. He's got very little facial skin showing. It's kind of a beard to here now, and he's kind of a lot of shirtless photos, a lot of fish photos I see these days.
I saw the one of him in the mud.
Yeah, it's getting a little rough out there. But anyways, he's still having fun out there in Suriname, and one day he'll join civilization again. I can't believe I'm the one more in civilization than Nick. Who the hell would have thought that would happen? But yeah,
I know.
But the little English city boy is out there enjoying the jungles of Suriname. So we love you, Mick. We miss you, and I guess that kind of wraps it up for this week. And we'll see what we have and where we go and who we're talking to next week. As always, life's just one big adventure, and we will see where next week's episode takes us. So thanks a lot, Michaela, and see you next week, everybody.
Bye, y'all.